All right, guys, welcome back to the Discovering Eden podcast. My name is Brandon,
And I'm Jonathan.
and we don't know what we're going to talk about
No,
today.
we were stalling for the last 10 minutes before we hit record.
Uh, it also doesn't help that I know we were both busy this week
Yeah,
with
not
work.
the greatest week, but we're here.
Let's just say Valentine's Day for pizza places is kind of busy, or it can be.
I was baking all day, so I got to avoid that part. I just got to zone out, but I had a lot to do, so.
Yeah, I did too, which is why I didn't get to prep this episode at all. And this is where it comes to, man, maybe you should take a week off. And then we're like, no.
Don't I know it? I'd love a vacation.
But like some of these things is like, I think it's just real to just be where we're at and that you guys come along with the ride. Because guess what? Sure, I have an outline. But what happens when you don't get to prep anything or work on anything? You can't just call an audible and say, we'll do it next week.
Yeah, we tried that before, I feel like.
We definitely have.
And it never works super well.
So bear with us. This will be an interesting episode.
We might stay focused, we might not. There might be werewolf talk again. I don't know.
Hey, this is where the spiritual warfare side of things can come in. It can derail it real quick.
Oh yeah.
It just so happens that's the thing we're talking about, and then of course we're super busy, and then don't have time to prep anything. Coincidence? I think not. But
alas,
we
are here.
We are here, and we need prayer. So, Jonathan, lead us into it.
Lord, you know our hearts better than even we do. Lord, you know how busy this week has been, not just for us, but I'm sure for everybody watching at home. Life is often hectic, crazy, and unpredictable. But you're a constant and a present factor through it all. Lord, I just pray that as we engage in this conversation, that you keep us on track, at least to an extent where what we have to say is still from you and not just complete goofy antics that have, take away from the heart of what we're trying to say and what you're trying to say through us, Lord. I just pray for wisdom, guidance, and perseverance. We just thank you for this time to gather together and talk. Amen.
And all right, let's get into the bumper. The one consistent thing about this episode.
All right, I gotta sit up. Okay.
And
I thought I had more time.
You know what? It's fine. And then we were also talking about, as we went to the bumper, and God. That's another consistent. Kind of a big consistent.
Yeah.
Because if God wasn't here, this podcast wouldn't exist, and that'd be kind of awkward. Just like this silence.
Awkward. Anyway, I would ask you what we're talking about, but
it's a great question.
I don't think you even know. So
I have things written down.
Yes,
but
the outline.
They're more of just a collection of ideas.
Yeah, basically a jumping off point for research that didn't happen.
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Here's a bunch of different verses and everything that goes with some of these other topics that could be interesting, conversation starters for an episode.
Mm-hmm.
But currently, to me, that's all they are. So, I mean, we can go down the list. Because I
pick a random one. That's why we need a wheel, just.
Yeah, honestly, I don't want to spend the time to make it on a wheel to do it. But I kind of grouped them into like 4 separate groupings, and these are all like biblical topics within spiritual warfare. So, like, where in the Bible do you see spiritual warfare? And so I kind of compiled a list of different things I thought of as ideas, and then kind of group them in categories, which isn't necessarily the right thing to do because, you categorize things, you kind of limit things, but I don't know. It was a starting point for me kind of coming up with it. And now I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh boy. So, you know what? Let's go into, we're just going to go top to bottom.
Okay, yeah.
Or get as far as we can before calling it.
You don't want to start in the middle and just go in either which direction.
Just popcorn around. So we'll start in my titled thing of influence of the enemy for spiritual warfare. So I think one of the biggest things or biggest books of the Bible that I think of when it comes to spiritual warfare is the book of Job.
Yeah, that's the big one. The white whale, really. I mean, when you think about spiritual warfare or... Yeah, trains left the station. When you think about spiritual warfare, your mind goes to, at least I would say both of our minds go to Job.
And, like, specifically, and this is when I think of, like, basically Satan asking for authority to enact these things that will happen to Job.
It's like a little kid going to their parent, like, hey, can I touch the stove? Like...
And, I mean, it shows that, God has authority over the enemy. So that's awesome and all. But it also, I think, highlights the influence that the enemy has on our lives, which is a spiritual thing. And a lot of things that happen, often as we view them in a negative standpoint, I think does stem from spiritual warfare. Like the enemy attacking us. Now, obviously, it's a lot more complicated than what the book of Job makes it seem to be, because the book of Job is kind of more of a one-on-one kind of scenario. It's often a lot more complex. I mean, not often. It is a lot more complex, because then you have the questions of why do bad things happen to good people? That's kind of stemming from Job a little bit, but then it's like, well, then why is there war? Why is there like all
basically
these?
Why is suffering a thing?
Yeah. And again, this kind of all ties back into, well, this is the influence of the enemy, and it goes all the way back to the garden.
Yeah.
Even chronologically, like when you read the Bible as it was intended, like, I guess in time, like chronologically, Job is like the second book of the Bible after Genesis.
Interesting.
So take into consideration the serpent in the garden, which is Genesis, like early stages of Genesis 2, Genesis 3. You have that, and then the next book later, Job, chronologically speaking. I mean, technically there's verses and like mentioned in like John and different things like that, but in all compiled things, I believe Job is the second chronological. And a lot of these were passed down orally, so that's why it's
all kind of mismatched.
All kind of, the reason why the Bible is the way it is and how it's structured is because they put it with similar things. So, for example, you have the Torah in the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Wow, I can't even think. It's been a week. Deuteronomy and wow,
the 5th one.
This is terrible. Oh man.
Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy. Is it Numbers?
Yeah, it's Numbers.
feel like,
It's
yeah.
Numbers, yeah, because Numbers and Deuteronomy and
Numbers is
Leviticus
number
are all.
5.
Yep. Okay. Wow. Yep. Seminary student here.
We had it's been a week. It's all right.
I know what it's called and everything.
You asked me the name and I can get it down. The order, not today.
But even so, like some of them are like, these are hymns, and these are songs, and these are words of wisdom. These are poetic. Like there's some of those.
There's a method to the structure.
Yeah. Like you have the minor prophets all lumped together. You have the judges. Like a lot of them are kind of based on time. But especially when you get to the Kings, Judges, Chronicles, they're all over the place because you read one and then it goes backtrack. You go back there and then you backtrack again once you get further down. You're like, what's going on?
It's almost like they're being collected by genre in a sense. Not entirely, but in a sense.
Yeah. Well, long story short, we got off track somewhere.
We were still talking about the Bible, though, so that's good for us.
That's positive.
Let's look at the net positives here, the silver linings. We may not know what we're talking about, but we're talking about the Bible.
Okay. Oh, man. Because I wrote this kind of when we were doing the Creatures series.
That was a good series.
So I have a note on here to rehash Leviathan and Behemoth. Kind of going back to what we talked about in the Creature series. So if you don't know what that is, go check them out.
It's a really good series.
So the point that I made before, and again, this is according to me. So ATB, according to Brandon, that's the translation that we're doing here. So obviously take it with it's not an actual translation. It's just things that pop up into this dome and see what sticks kind of thing. But I did mention this in the Leviathan and Behemoth episodes on the podcast, in which I equated Leviathan as like the unknown and the Behemoth as the known. Let's see how exactly. So, yeah. So, God is greater than that which is known and that which is unknown. Kind of taking more of symbolic might be a good word to do it, approach on like Job. But the fact that Leviathan and Behemoth, like they seem like physical creatures as they're described in Job, but at the same time it takes the imagery of them and it makes me think of like unknown and known, because Leviathan is like the ultimate unknown. Kind of with the water, we don't really know anything that's in the water because it's just, we don't live there.
It's a mystery.
It goes with that mystery aspect of it. And to me, kind of this Leviathan Behemoth narrative that you find in Job, and kind of God's response to Job, kind of confronting this idea of spiritual warfare, is as such. It's talking about spiritual warfare. So when you think of Leviathan and Behemoth in terms of spiritual warfare, what comes to mind is that of which is unknown and that which is known. And the fact that God has authority over both. And then you have the mystery element that you were talking about with Leviathan. Well, guess what? What's spiritual warfare? It's kind of a mystery. It's not even on the same, spiritual. It's in an entirely different realm. An alternate plane of existence, but yet at the same time is intermingled and intertwined within both. Which is confusing and complex and a mystery all in one. And then the ultimate thing for Job is, guess what? God's has it all under control. He has authority over everything that happens. Where do you want to place your trust? If you want to place your trust in what's known in Behemoth, cool. But that's only an aspect or a reflection of the creator, not the creator himself.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could do the other aspect of it, and you can place your trust in Leviathan. And focus on all the mystery, the spirituality, and everything like that, but miss the big point.
Mm-hmm.
You see that even with, like, say, Japanese mythology or even ancient Egyptian,
Mm-hmm.
where they're super spiritual, but they miss the point. Where it comes down to, it's like, okay, where's the root of all those? It's God, who has authority over both. There goes my... Don't know if that picked it up.
We'll find out in post. What post, you say? None, because it's not edited.
So, you have anything else to add, or do we just go down the list?
Okay, now that I stalled for enough time, we can go down the list. Yeah, no, I've got nothing. Sorry.
You can add to, and not just go off my notes so they don't even remember talking about or writing down. I don't even know when I wrote this, to be honest. I know the points I'm trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, where exactly am I going? I link things together. Are they good together? I don't know. This is what the screening process is before these videos, but I didn't do that. So you guys get to go along with us. All right. So another influence of the enemy thing that I have down here is Jesus getting tempted in the wilderness in Matthew 4, 1 through 11. So how about you pull that up and read it, just so you can be involved. Because obviously God has authority over the enemy, but yet Jesus in his humanity is still tempted by Satan, tempted by the flesh.
You want the NIV?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to read it.
Yes.
All right. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Jesus answered, "It is written, 'Man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God.'" Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. "If you are the Son of God," he said, "throw yourself down, for it is written, 'He will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone.'" Jesus answered him, "It is also written, 'Do not put the Lord your God to the test.'" Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. "All this I will give you," he said, "if you will bow down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, 'Worship the Lord your God and serve him only.'" Then the devil left him, and angels came and attended to him.
So in that, Jesus again was quoting scripture, as he often does. To kind of go back to what we were talking last week, he had that sword, and he was defending, not attacking. Again, case in point. Had the sword of truth. And, a lot of those, differences that you see kind of catered to what I think a lot of people's struggles are. So Like, for example, one of them is fear of heights. Cast yourself off of this, ledge, and we'll tell your angels that you can catch them, so you don't hit the ground below. Jesus is like, no, don't put the Lord your God to the test.
Yeah.
I mean, part of me is like, well, duh, don't just throw yourself off the edge. Jesus, take the wheel, but like, you're not even in a car at that point. What are you telling God to do? Have you sprout wings and fly? But that's besides the point. Something that's interesting that stands out to me is the number 40. 40 days and 40 nights. For fasting. What? Now I know what my answer to my question I'm about to pose, but I'm curious to see what you would say. What does that remind you of, or what does that make you think of?
40 days, 40. I gotta set up. 40 days, 40 nights.
Correct.
Okay, this is probably not where you're going, but the other area of scripture where I remember them using that exact phrasing is with the flood, the 40 days, 40 nights.
It's used in multiple places, but
that's the one where my mind jumps to immediately. I don't think that's where you were necessarily going.
Part of it.
Okay.
Part of it, but go on.
No, that's what I had.
I was trying to help you elaborate, and you're just like, nope, that's it. Everything else is gone. I just remember 40, and then that's it.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Long week. My mind isn't working.
Neither is mine.
I remember that simply because there was a question in the game we're doing for youth
tonight
related to that.
Okay.
So I was coming
You're
up with,
welcome.
Well, it was already in there. I put it in there last night when I was working on it. It was like, what's a good trivia question? Oh, how many days did the flood go? 40 days, 40 nights.
Okay.
It's just convenient.
So, okay, fine. Let me go down that trail then. So, why did the flood happen?
To eradicate sin and evil, because God saw that the world had become wicked.
So when
barring Noah, who he saw as righteous.
So again, when you look back to Jesus at this point, he's fasting, but what is he fasting for?
You're asking me deep questions on a day I'm not prepared for it. I'm sorry.
These conversations are working. My questions are too good. I don't have any notes, so they're coming off the dome.
My dome doesn't work right now.
Okay. Fine. Here's a question to you, audience. Don't look it up.
You could look it up.
I mean, you could look it up. But how would you answer that question? What was Jesus fasting for? We all, at the end of everything, we know that Jesus died for the sake of all of humanity, to take on all the sins of the world onto his shoulders and nail it to the cross. Now, what he's doing here, he knows what's going to eventually happen. Like Jesus himself prays that, Lord, if you're willing, please take this cup from me. Like when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane praying to God. He's like, I don't want to do this, God. But not my will, but your will be done. And it shall be done. I don't even want to know the amount of spiritual warfare Jesus had on him. It would have been insane. Now, partly why I think he fasts there is because of this eventuality. And he wants to be laser focused on God, the Father. Because if you are not laser focused at that point, that's when you can, come into temptation. And here's another thing. So here's the other 40 that I thought of.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily 40, but close enough. The wandering in the desert. 40 years.
They really like that number.
There's a lot of, obviously the number thing, and maybe I'm wrong with the 40. I could be. Didn't really look it up again. But
this is ATB, remember?
ATB. But I'm pretty sure it was 40. Where they were wandering in the desert.
I think you're right.
And so much of what Jesus kind of harkens back to, and this is because not only did he grow up a Jew, the Pentateuch, they would have known the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
Just like they would say the Shema, which that'll be in a future episode. But Jesus quotes the most from the book of Deuteronomy. So, knowing the wandering in the desert and everything like that with Exodus, he would have been very much aware. And what did the Exodus or the wandering in the desert help the Israelites? Well, it helped them grow closer to God and become dependent fully on him. It was to break away the shackles that kept them to Egypt, to the fertility that it brought. So where you need to find your sustenance at that point is in God and God alone. And they kept wandering because they tried going back. Their mind kept falling back.
It wasn't just physical slavery, it was spiritual and emotional and mental as well.
They were, in that 40 years, discovering who God was, and more importantly, in my opinion, who they were in God. Whose they were. Now, part of it is, like, when we think, like, physically, we're drawn to things that we know well. So if you've only known your life through bondage, doing anything outside of that quote-unquote normal is change. And a lot of times we're resistant to change. And that took 40 years to break that cycle of change. Very few actually made it into the promised land that initially came from Egypt. In fact, I don't want to say anybody did, not even Moses. 40 years. Jesus fasted 40 days and 40 nights. Both of the instances we provided. 40, there's always these number things, and it just hits a lot harder, in my opinion, when you think of things that way. Maybe we just focus on the one this episode, and then we can go into the other ones later, so I have ideas for what we do next.
That was a weird laugh. I'm sorry.
So, I kind of went in chronological order. That's kind of fun. Let's go to the next bullet point here, which is an interesting thing that maybe people don't know. But how about you read Luke 22, 1 through 6?
I gotta look it up first. Hold on.
Alexa, read this.
No, I don't get along with Siri.
I said Alexa.
I don't have Alexa. All right. Now the festival of unleavened bread, called the Passover, was approaching, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for some way to get rid of Jesus, for they were afraid of the people. Then Satan entered Judas, called Iscariot, one of the 12. And Judas went to the chief priests and the officers of the temple guard and discussed with them how he might betray Jesus. They were delighted and agreed to give him money. He consented and watched for an opportunity to hand over Jesus to them when no crowd was present.
Now, what it says in there is Judas was possessed by Satan.
Mm-hmm. Seems like spiritual warfare to me.
Just a little bit.
Just a tad.
I think he was influenced by the enemy a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a tad.
Well, it's interesting because they specifically mention what possessed him to give in to it, to that material wealth and the money.
Well, it wasn't necessarily that as well, because I think back, and again, I'm gonna clarify it as ATB here. But I've heard, like, I don't know if this is rabbinic tradition or whatever, but obviously there were the Jewish revolts and everything that were kind of going around, which would happen later around that time. They wanted change, but they wanted forcible change. Like, they looked to Jesus as a conqueror who would be a conqueror, who would take over Rome and Roman rule. However, that's not how Jesus went about things, as we know. And Judas, I believe, was one of the radicals that wanted change to happen. And when Jesus wasn't going around the way that Judas wanted, that's when the enemy took over. And then, as we go to the end of Judas's life, where he takes his own, he immediately regrets his decision. It's like, what have I done? He takes the coins that he had, basically. Well, because I think he bought a plot of land with the money, and he took himself out in that plot of land. Which is why it was called blood money and everything like that. That was in scripture and everything. It's in the Bible. But when you think back to Job, the book of Job, and this is why it's really difficult for me to comprehend or understand sometimes. Because I don't want to see Judas as evil at this point. Like, obviously, a lot of the blame gets put on Judas because of the betrayal. But he felt extremely guilty afterward, to the point of taking himself out, which is not a healthy thing to do. But again, you look back to the book of Job, God had to give authority to the enemy to possess Judas, knowing full well what would happen. And there's a lot of people that think like Judas wouldn't be in heaven because of this very, betrayal and all that. And this is where like this predestination or free will comes in. This whole debate. If this was the route it was going to go, if Jesus takes everything on him, why did Judas have to be this quote unquote scapegoat? If he was thinking the same thing that anybody at that time probably would have thought of, we want to conquer. And he felt extremely remorseful afterward. Like, and this is where it gets really complicated. Okay, here's the question, pose this. Does Judas have a chance to be in heaven?
a deep question.
It's not easily answered.
No,
In fact, I don't think any of us can answer.
No, I was gonna say. I mean, you can throw ideas out there like, but whether you say yes, no, maybe so, I don't think any of them are a satisfactory answer just because we don't know.
And again, this is fear of the unknown, the mystery behind it. Some of these things we don't know. Just like everything that came before Jesus, we don't necessarily know what happens to the people who died beforehand. Because that was before Jesus died and took on the sins. Now, that's where it becomes really complicated. Okay, so if God's omnipresent, for example, can he go back in those times, in that same time, and like you're actually forgiven? You know, when they die, oh, look, it's Jesus. I don't know. Like, these are all hypotheticals. That's a lot of what some of these things are. I know in like Sunday school or different questions, like there was a question that pops up sometime of, if you could talk to any Bible character, who would you want to talk to? Well, one of them for me would be Judas. But often they phrase it in a way of, who in heaven would you like to see? And Judas often wasn't a part of that discussion. And I don't think it's justifiable in that sense, because if Jesus, died for the sake of all humanity, well, that would also encompass those who went against. And I think at the heart of it, Judas didn't want to betray Jesus.
No. Well, and again, you see the regret. I mean, if we believe that God knows our hearts, I mean,
ultimate. There's a better way he could have gone around it.
Of course, but I don't want to say there was repentance, because I don't love the idea of
I don't think
quoting somebody's, taking their own life as repentance, but it was regret. It was remorse.
There was a lot of guilt and regret. I don't know if he even really had the chance.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, is that's why I wouldn't necessarily call it that.
He tried to take on the blame on himself.
Yes.
He didn't consult anybody else. He didn't surround himself with community at that point. He
allowed the guilt to eat him away.
Yeah. He tried bottling it up on his own, and it burst on him. It's like the survivor's guilt for like PTSD. And PTSD is a real thing that, when it gets down to it, people more often than not take their own lives. And I can't imagine what Judas was going through. I bet, and again, this is ATB, that he was trying to nudge Jesus in the direction where Judas wanted him to go. To be more on the, okay, let's start, making a stand. Let's start this revolt. And then when it didn't go the way he wanted, he kind of jumped on the temptation that were from the leaders of the law to basically turn on Jesus. And he's like, well, maybe if this gets him to go in the direction, I'll do it. And the enemy takes over. And it happens. And then he's like, aha, there he goes. Because I really do think Judas thought Jesus was the Son of God. But, like what the enemy was tempting Jesus with, save yourself, I think he would have thought Jesus would save himself.
Mm.
But when he didn't, and he took it on, Judas's heart sinks. To me, that's how the story goes. Because Judas believed the lie. He was trying to put God to the test.
Yeah.
And Judas ultimately serves as an example for us who live today what not to do. But I can't imagine I'm like Judas later on being like, Jesus, I didn't want to be the example of what not to do. Could you alter that a little bit? I mean, you see that with other characters in the Bible as well as examples of what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, Jonah is one of them. Often people are like, oh yeah, Jonah. But he's the epitome of, man, God, I knew you wanted to save these people, and I really didn't for the Ninevites. Oh yeah, that's surely a godly behavior right there. It's a minor prophet. Almost didn't want to be a prophet.
Yeah, he's just. This sucks. I don't like this.
I don't like that you're so nice.
Stay home.
I want to go to this other side of the continent or other side of the world.
It's nicer over here. Why'd you send me there?
Yeah. What else do we have on here? You know, we'll go into the next one next week.
Sounds delightful.
Because I think this went a lot better than I anticipated it going. So thank God for that. Anyway, that'll probably be it for this episode. Thank you again for watching. Share with people who you think will benefit from this. Yeah. Catch you guys on the flip side.
Bye.
Oh, this is awkward. Mouse died. Bye.